hard to, We'll run with this. Let's just run with this. Let's see if this works.
It will.
Okay.
I'm amazed.
It's got 3 bars. We're good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'm not going to be moving around too much, so we're good. Okay, well, tonight we're going to be looking at, excuse me, the book of Mark. Specifically Mark chapter 7. It's a really neat a passage of in the life of Jesus, and basically, he really makes some really good points that we can certainly use every day. Everything, of course, everything he says we can certainly pay attention to. Excuse me. So, but basically, the gist of this particular passage is about the Pharisees, and Jesus kind of lets them have it. That's just the best way of putting it. So basically, the question is, who were the Pharisees? I think everybody here probably knows who they were, but basically, they were a party of religious leaders. Okay, they had a way of doing things. They were very legalistic. They worshipped. I'm going to put those quotes in there. They worshipped God through the maintenance of rituals. They would do the same thing over and over because, well, that's just the way it's always been done. And if you divert from that pattern, then there must be something wrong with you, and you're not one of God's people. Okay, that was their opinion. Well, what they did was they took the law of Moses and they turned it up to 11. I like to say, they made rules and laws on top of what Moses gave them, what God gave them, and some of them meant something, some of them just that people. And this was like since Moses, the current time that we're looking at is like 1,500 years after Moses gave the law, after God gave them all the law through Moses. And they had all this time to take this law and modify it, transmogrify it, interpret it, and just in all kinds of different grotesque ways. And that was still, quote, their religion, okay? But the main thing that these laws, all these laws that the Pharisees like to push forward on, the main thing of what it did was it maintained their power and their influence over the people. Because, they could all together get together and say, oh, so-and-so didn't do X, Y, Z, or so-and-so walked a little bit too far on the Sabbath, so we're going to throw them out of the synagogue or something like that. And, it turned into a real difficult situation. And it had nothing to do with God at this point. It had to do with the power of the Pharisees. So, of course, the Pharisees would also just look down on everybody who didn't do the things that they do. That they did. They would train them. They'd hyper-train themselves to never make a mistake. Always do, X, Y, Z. Okay. And it was a very kind of a toxic teaching that they had. Anyway, in this passage in Mark chapter 7, so Jesus was basically teaching in Galilee, okay? And so as we start reading, we'll see that there's the Pharisees. Galilee's up in the northern part of the country. The Pharisees are coming from Jerusalem. They want to see, what's all the stuff that's going on with this Jesus guy? So they're coming up and they're checking him out, seeing what's going on. Well, let's go ahead and let's read Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. Then the Pharisees and some of the scribes came together to him, having come from Jerusalem. Now when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands in a special way, holding the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And there are many other things which they have received and hold, like the washing of cups, pitchers, copper vessels, and couches. Some people may have couches in their translation, some may not. I don't even know if that has anything to do with like sofas or anything like that, because I don't know. If Tables?
It may, because especially I know during the Roman Empire, they like to recline when they eat, so they would lay forward on their
Yeah.
stomachs up against the.
It could very well be. Some of the Trump translate, or some of the original source manuscripts don't even have that word. So we don't really know if that's, actually there. But anyway, in King James, or at least the New King James, they do add it in. But, it doesn't really change anything. But the idea is that this is what they did. And let's continue by reading verse 5. Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the traditions of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands?" So, what do you think? I think these guys, but see, there's like, you can think about it a couple of different ways. What do you think of the motives of these questioners? It seems like a simple question. It's like, well, wait a minute, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? Maybe they just want to know. Oh, of course they are. But I wrote down 3 different possibilities, okay? Number 1 was to denigrate Jesus and his followers, because obviously they were jealous of Jesus' authority and the way Jesus was healing people and was obviously being used of God, and they didn't even have any idea that he might be the Son of God. But another possible would be, well, maybe they just have an honest question, maybe, what's the difference? They just want to understand what the differences are. And that's, maybe it's on the scope of possibilities. And then, of course, the other is, suppose, maybe one of these guys wanted to follow Jesus, but wanted to see, well, wait, how can I follow you and also be loyal to the guys back in Jerusalem? How is that going to be possible? Can I do that? And, try to figure that out. And, if it were the second 2 questions, those are honest questions, But this was not. This was not that. This was the first thing. Their reason they asked was to denigrate Jesus and his followers. Now, just by looking at the question directly, we can't really tell that. However, what do we see? We do see Jesus' response. He knew what was going on in their hearts. And I'm sure you can imagine how they must have asked the question. It's like, wait a minute. And of course, their nose might have been up in the air just a little bit, Why don't you do things the way that we do things? Of course, it was, oh yes, and of course, they had all seen this before. It's like, okay, they're getting ready to give it to you, So, that is what I call the question, okay? And then Jesus gives the answer. And wow, what an answer, okay? So let's, in the beginning of the answer is in verses 6 through 8. And so how did he answer? He didn't answer like, well, it's kind of like this. No, what did he say? He said, he answered and said to them, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites. As it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men, the washing of pitchers and cups, and many such other things as you do. He let them have it, did he not? Right? Hypocrites. We all know what the word, some of us may know what the word hypocrites, maybe some don't. But a hypocrite is basically an actor, okay? Or somebody who holds a face mask up. It's like to hide, conceal who they actually are, right? And that's the word would actually be considered mask wearer. Somebody who's hiding behind the face of perfection. But if they take it away, it's somebody who has no idea, okay? So, of course, Jesus rightly judged that their hearts were all about the performance and not about honoring God. And of course, the Pharisees were hiding, behind the mask. They were hiding their spiritual condition by performing spiritually. Okay? It's just, they look really good because they were doing all the washing. They were doing all the things. They were taking care of all the, doing all the things that their forefathers and their forefathers and their forefathers had told them that they needed to do. And they were as useless to God as somebody who was just a heathen. So Jesus let them have it, okay? So, and under the guidance of the Pharisees, in fact, the Jewish religion had basically become extremely legalistic, political, man-pleasing, rather than God-focused. It's about the maintenance of power, okay? That's all it is. It's not about God. It's maintenance of power. So Jesus quotes, in this passage, Jesus quotes Isaiah chapter 29. Let's see. This is Isaiah 29. But let me read a little bit more of Isaiah 29 so we can get a little bit more in context. I'd love to do another lesson on the whole chapter of Isaiah 29, but let's just read a bit of it. So starting in verse 13, God says, "Inasmuch as these people draw near with their mouths and honor me with their lips, but have removed their hearts far from me, and the fear toward me, and their fear toward me is taught by the commandment of men. Therefore, behold, I will again do a marvelous work among this people, a marvelous work and a wonder. For the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall be hidden. Woe to those who seek deep to hide their counsel far from the Lord." That's what they're doing with the masks, right? They're hiding, okay? In fact, they're completely divorcing their counsel from what God had asked them to do. And their works are in the dark. So what kind of works generally happen in the dark? We don't have to be specific. Not the good things, right? The evil things. And they say, "Who sees us and who knows us? Surely you have things turned around. Shall the potter be esteemed as the clay? For shall the thing made say of him who made it, he did not make me? Or shall the thing formed say of him who formed it, he has no understanding?" So these guys are talking about, basically in the way they're living their lives, they're talking about God as, it's like a yeah, but kind of a situation. Let's follow these rules, okay? And Jesus lets them have it, okay? So the thing is, like this book the book of Isaiah was written like 600 years or so before, even more than 600, like 700 years before, Jesus was talking to the Pharisees. This was not a new thing, They had been doing this for a long time, and it's only gotten 700 years worse, okay? So basically, the Pharisees are laying aside their commitment to God to hold to the tradition of men, okay? So, let's see. So when we have the question is when we do something, okay? What is our focus when we are doing? I'm talking about applying it to ourselves, okay? What is our focus? Is our focus on being seen? Is our focus on looking spiritual, okay? Or is our focus on serving God? So we still have the same propensity as these Pharisees. It's so easy to turn into that, and I'm sure we've seen it before. And we have to look at our own selves. Do we put burdens in front of lost people of our own design? I'm not talking about believe in God, believe in Jesus, understand to get saved. Do we put But you can't really be saved unless, another couple of things. Are we moving the goalposts on them? Like with laws that we make? May it never be. And at least at this church, may it never be, okay? So, but the thing is we need to not look around at others and look and say, oh, yeah, that's just what they're doing over there, okay? We need to look at ourselves, okay? We need to always have that in front of our eyes that we are not doing that ourselves. Jesus came down really hard on these guys. I mean, the fact is, if there'd been like 100 atheists standing right there, he probably would have ignored the atheists and still come down on the Pharisees, because they were even worse. He wants to, these atheists, he knows what he's got there. These guys were polluting, just like destroying people's faith, and it was extremely ugly. Okay. So let's continue on in verses 9 through 13. So Jesus said to them, "All too well you reject the commandment of God, that you may keep your tradition. For Moses said, 'Honor your father and your mother,' and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, if a man says to his father or mother, 'Whatever profit you might have received from me is Corban,' that is, a gift to God, then you no longer let him do anything for his father or mother, making the word of God of no effect through your traditions, which you have handed down, and many such things you do." So this is one example. That's the thing. It's like at the end of verse 12, he implies this is just like one example of it. So basically, you can use this. Just say this magic word, saying it's Corban. Oh, look, that frees me of my responsibility to my parents. Well, I mean, what in the world? Where was that in? How did Moses even come close to saying something like that? This is like so far removed. And it's, again, we have to watch and make sure that we're not guilty of the same. Okay? So, but again, it's the many such things you do. Okay? So, but the thing is this is the way that it is when left to man. Okay? Lawyers, what do lawyers do? They create loopholes. Right? It's like there's a law, and it's like, love your neighbor as yourself, But what if,
Who's my neighbor?
Who is my neighbor? Yeah, that's that same thinking that's coming out. Wait, who is it that I can exclude from that list of neighbors that I don't have to love? Can I say that the people that are ethnically different than me, are they not my neighbor? Are they? People who, is that the case? No, I don't think so. But it's so easy. You see how insidious it can get. You justify the way that you think already and you can point at the law and say, see, I'm doing what's right. Okay? So let's continue on in verse 14 through 16. When he had called all the multitude to himself, he said to them, "Hear me, everyone, and understand. There is nothing that enters a man from outside which can defile him. But the things which come out of a man, those are the things that defile him. If anyone has ears, let him hear." I love that. I love that expression. If anyone has ears, let him hear. And it just basically says, pay attention. Think about what I'm saying. Don't just let it go past me, go past you. And and of course in Isaiah, it talks about there's so many passages in there that talk about how the people of Israel have, they're not listening. Their eyes they can't. They're not able to see. Their ears are stopped. Yes. And this is the same situation. So, so basically, the idea is that they had spent this whole time, this 1,500 years or whatever it is since Moses gave the commandment, just figuring out loopholes. Okay. So now what is Jesus saying here when he says There is nothing that enters a man from outside which can defile him, but the things which come out of a man, those are the things that defile a man. So let's think about that one together. What does that mean? I'll just throw that out there.
He's almost throwing away their whole diet, that there is no unclean food.
Well, in a way, yeah, it kind of is, yeah.
But it's the man himself that's unclean.
Yes.
He's defiled.
The idea, imagine what's going on in your brain when you think, I need to keep myself pure and holy, okay? So what do? I need to make sure that I don't accidentally ingest any dirt, okay?
Yeah.
Because if there's any dirt, any sin, dirt being sin, then that is making me unclean.
Yeah.
That's making me dirty, okay? But what does Jesus say? The other thing. It's not what's coming from the outside into you. It's what's coming out of you
The outside.
outside.
That's what you're doing and saying.
Yes. Yeah. So, I'm sure that probably, I'm sure a lot of cocked heads probably were, wait, what is he saying? What is he saying? But of course, they're talking about cleaning all these cups and stuff like that. And it's like, you just got to clean the cups. If the cups are clean, then you'll be holy, It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
What does it say in James chapter 1? James chapter 1, 13 through 15. Oh, wait, I've got to find it here. James 1, 13 through 15. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. And verse 14 is the kicker. But each one is tempted when he's drawn away by his, what? His own desires and enticed. Then, when the desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. Are we blaming something else out there for our own sin? We don't have very much grounds to do that, do we? The whole devil made me do it kind of a thing. We got enough iniquity inside ourselves to take care of anything, to cause any sin that we already do. So if starting in verse 17, 17 through 23. So Jesus then, after he says this to this crowd, and like I say, you can imagine that the crowd kind of like, wait, what is he saying? And then they got him alone back in this house a little bit afterwards. The disciples asked him, let's read 17 and following. When he had entered a house far away from the crowd, his disciples asked him concerning the parable. So he said to them, are you thus without understanding also? Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from outside cannot defile him? Because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purifying all foods. There you say, purifying all foods. And he said, what comes out of a man that defiles a man? For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed what? Evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All of these evil things come from within, and that's what is defiling. So it's
Other than that, people are basically good, right?
other than that. Well put. Yeah. So we kind of get the idea, and that's kind of their little routine that they went to. It was actually destructive. It gave them the idea that they were clean, they were pure. But if they bring anything dirty in, that's what makes them dirty. That's wrong. Okay, so let's continue on reading verses 17 through 20. Oh, I just read 17 through 23. So, but that's the whole idea there. Okay. So let's continue on here with 24 through 30. Okay, it kind of changes track here, but again, we have the same big theme, And that is the whole idea that I'm doing some really wonderful things over here. I'm following all the laws that the people gave, that my ancestor gave me and their ancestor gave them, and all that stuff. I'm honoring God with all of this stuff. But where is Jesus going? Who's he actually encountering? Who's he turning to? You know, he's like, he looks at these Pharisees and basically tells them all the what for, and then turns around, and what does he do? Okay, let's continue on. So verse 24. From there he arose and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon. What do you guys know about Tyre and Sidon? It ain't in Israel. That's all you got to know.
That's where Jezebel was from.
Yes, indeed. I was going to mention that. Yes, that's Jezebel's hometown. Yeah.
It's also the place where Jesus used as an example. If Tyre and Sidon, if he'd gone there and preached,
Yeah.
they'd repented right away.
Yes.
And that's when he curses some of the towns in Israel who were rejecting what he said.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where we're at right now.
And I think the widow from Zarephath was from that region.
I think you're right. Yeah. From Elijah. Yeah. So in verse 24, from there he arose and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered a house and wanted no one to know it. I love the way this works. He entered a house and wanted no one to know it, but he could not be hidden. I think if Jesus really wanted to be hidden, he probably would be hidden. But, the thing is like he was there, and it's like the people around were just like, they were so excited. They saw what was going on. They saw people being healed. They saw him, the wisdom that he was giving. It's like, a light on a hill cannot be hidden, or a city on a hill can't be hidden. But he could not be hidden. For a woman whose young daughter had an unclean spirit heard about him, and she came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, okay? And Greek could mean that she was literally Greek, or it could mean she's a Gentile, okay? But she's a Syro-Phoenician by birth, which means, think of Syria, think of Lebanon, up in that area, okay? Not Israel, okay? And she kept asking, and the thing that pops out to me is she kept asking. In other words, how many times did she ask? 2, 3, 4, 5? I don't know how many times. Many times. She kept asking, okay? She asked him to cast the demon out of her daughter. But Jesus said to her, "Let the children be filled first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." What do we take of this? What do we make of this, that Jesus would say something like this?
I think he was saying that the people of Israel, as the ones he came to, why should we give it to the Greeks or the Gentiles?
And that's what it sounds like, doesn't
But
it?
she was, with her persistence, she persisted until he did what she was asking.
She did.
Well, I think he knew along what he was going to do. He knew what he was going to say, but he wanted everyone else to hear it. He
I think
wanted
you're
her
right.
response.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. He knew it was in her heart, and he obviously had to ignore her 2 or 3 times, or at least seem to ignore her. But he knew what was going on. Okay. But, yeah.
I think too, these same men that we were looking at that were following traditions,
Yeah.
they looked at her and her people as dogs.
Yes. Absolutely.
Their heart was
Right.
not right at all.
Absolutely. I mean, Jesus was answering her when she asked for this, as though he'd been one of the religious leaders. Absolutely. And it's like, I can't believe Jesus would say that. But like what you said, Amanda, I think he knew what was going on in her heart, and he used the point he used the opportunity, or the preordained opportunity probably, to make the point. So yeah, like he says, let the children be filled first. For it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And the word little dogs does not mean vicious dogs. It means just like little pet dogs. But nevertheless, it's kind of a little bit demeaning from the children of Israel, and then the dogs are a little bit lower. Jesus did not mean that, okay? He did not mean that they were actually lower. Because what was her response? She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs under the table eat from the children's crumbs." So what children's crumbs are we talking about? Think about the whole, about this metaphor of these crumbs, okay? The kids up on the table, that are up at the table, they're supposed to be the important ones, okay? They're taking the food, and they're like, they don't want any of it. They don't want it. Especially these, the Pharisees. It's like, it's not important to them, okay? The food that Jesus is giving, okay? But then, so what he says is, so she says, so even the little dogs under the table eat from the children's crumbs. And there's a lot of crumbs, okay, in this metaphor. And then what did he say to her? For this saying, go your way. The demon has come out of your daughter. He healed her. He sent that demon out right then for her faith, okay? And in verse 30, you see, and when she had come to her house, she found the demon gone out, and her daughter lying on the bed, and she was okay. So this was, that Jesus. I can only imagine when word of this came back to the Pharisees, that had just talked to them and had just gotten an earful. What do you think their response was? Oh boy. What do you think their response was? Once the Pharisees heard about this woman, her daughter being
wanting to kill him.
Yeah, that's probably where it started,
It
right?
just inflames him.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, and they thought they were being righteous in wanting to kill him. Which, obviously they were not, okay? That's the thing the sad thing about the whole crucifixion, it's like, these guys, they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were doing what tradition, or what, their religion would have them do. They felt this is what they needed to do.
Well, he
But
threatened their way of life.
Yes.
The Pharisees.
He did.
And he would be taking away all the luxury and everything that they have built up.
All the power and authority, the political power, we'll say that, political
Yes.
power.
So that's their motivation, is
Yeah.
that we don't want to lose what we have. We have it pretty good here.
Yeah,
He's going to take that away.
yeah. And it's amazing how he could just turn his back away, they could just turn their back away from the miracles and the teaching and just the truth of what he's saying, and they have their eyes covered and their mouths and their ears stopped up. And they have no problem doing that.
They're really, the Pharisees, the leaders at that time, they're lost.
Yes.
So they simply have no way, to know. Jesus even refers to them as blind leaders.
Blind guides, yeah.
Blind guides of the blind, meaning the blind common folk. He doesn't really come down too hard on the common folk. It's the people who should know, who they're supposed to be the leaders.
Yeah. So let's continue on. Let's look at verses 31 through 37. So Jesus, again, and I like the way it says again, departing from the region of Tyre and Sidon. Okay, so in verse 24, he was headed to Tyre and Sidon. I keep wanting to say Tidon and Sidon, but I know it's not right. So he's in verse 24, he's headed up that way. And then in verses 31, he's headed back from that direction. And he came through the midst of the region of the Decapolis to the Sea of Galilee. The Decapolis is like a little group of about 10 cities. Probably, it says Deca, so it should be exactly 10 cities, but it might have been about 10. I don't know. But there was a group, basically it was as Hellenized or Greek-speaking groups of little cities that are down there. Again, not really Israel, okay? It might have been in their, quote, territory, but it was definitely not, you know, Jewish, Judaism central, okay? So anyway, they brought to him one who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech. And they begged him to put his hand on him. And he took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers in his ears and spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be open. What do you think about when you read verse 33? He
Well,
put his
it's not
fingers
gross.
in his ears and he spat and touched his tongue. What did we start with? What did we start with up here?
Well, about the whole, they didn't hear, the Pharisees, they didn't hear.
They wanted him to wash the cups. Wash your hands, wash the cups, wash the things, keep everything clean. Don't get anything dirty inside of you.
Yeah.
And what did Jesus do?
It's kind of, yeah.
It's a little bit gross if you think about it, okay? But this is, it's almost like he was making a point, okay? It's like, this is not where I'm not getting defiled because of some germ that I'm picking up from touching the tongue or whatever. Instead, and this was not even a Jewish person. This was a, quote, heathen, okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead, yes,
But it
ma'am.
was obviously a display, because here he just cast out a demon without not even being, just by saying the word.
Yes.
So what he did had nothing to do with healing the guy, but it had to be for show.
Yeah, yeah, that maybe so. But I just, if you like dig into stuff like this, it's really interesting. And I really do think that he was making a show. It's like, I'm not worried about getting sick, okay? I'm not worried about getting something, I'm trying to heal this guy, okay? And he said, Ephphatha, that is, be open. And so what exactly was the problem with this guy? He was deaf and had an impediment in his speech. I want to focus on the deaf part, okay? Have we talked about deafness a little bit already tonight?
Yeah.
They would not open their ears. They would not open their eyes. Hearing, in fact, hearing you don't understand, and seeing you don't believe, or something like that. But, this guy here was like, he had nothing to do with Judaism, and Jesus reached out to him and saved him. And, healed him. And I would assume that, that probably changed his life a little bit.
Yeah.
So, in verse 35, so immediately his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plainly. Then he commanded them that they should tell no one. I love that. Again, it's the same kind of a thing. He commanded them that they should tell no one. But the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed it. So what do you think? Were they sinning when they did that? I don't know. Maybe that's just sort of like, I don't know. I'm not in that situation.
That's a tough one, but it's weird that he gave them the power of speech and then
Yeah.
he told them not to say anything. I never really.
Well, it wasn't just him. It was all the people who saw it, So it wasn't just him. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, He has done all things well. He makes both the deaf to hear and the mute to speak. So,
Well, I think that him telling them not to say anything, the Pharisees were all, oh, look at me, look what wonderful things I've done. And
Yeah.
he's saying, don't be telling people what I just did. He's being humble.
I think it is an example. I completely agree. If we do something that's awesome, we should not be, blowing our horn and tinkling the little cup or whatever it is. That is, yes, Matt?
It's a sin to disobey your parents, so I think they were sinning by telling everyone. Technically, their parents. Anyway.
I don't know. I'm just going to leave that one right there, okay? But, so, yeah, exactly. It's if something like this had happened to you, it's like, I couldn't talk. I couldn't hear, And then now, oh my goodness, hey, look, he's talking and hearing again. What happened to you?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I was
he-
gonna say, oh, nothing happened.
it's like, let me tell you about this guy. That's what he's gonna do. Okay? That's what he's gonna do. And that's what we ought to do. Okay? Because we're in the same boat. Even though we weren't deaf and made so we could hear, we weren't blind so we could see, but we were sinners and we were made redeemed. So we need to have the same idea about us, right?
Where did Jesus say the blind see and the deaf hear and the poor have the gospel preached to them?
Oh, it's in there somewhere. Yes, that sounds very
When
familiar.
John the Baptist's disciples went to him to
Yes.
find out, because John was in prison, are you the Messiah?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I'll look up Baptist and maybe I'll find it.
Okay. Well, that's, and yes, Georgine.
I believe it's up to God to open your ears and your eyes, because when I worked on the Citizens, there was a Christian lady that went to the church that I later went to, and she told me after I was saved, she said, I talked to you about the Lord all the time, and never heard her,
Yeah.
never heard her. So apparently I had to go through some more bad things before I succumbed to being saved.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think it's God's timing.
Yeah.
There is a response though, and you know, to him who has will more be given. You know what I mean? And he who doesn't have, even when he has, will be taken away. So there is a point where we have to respond to that inkling that we do get. And I mean, I see what you're saying, and I
Yeah,
agree.
because I never got an inkling.
Yeah.
Your ears weren't open, you
Yeah.
said.
But, I mean, I had a couple people talk to me about the Lord that I recall, and there was a little bit of a, should I, give this a little more attention? And then when I finally did respond, it was like, wow, it would be really hard to reject it at that point. But I mean, I think there is a point where we can harden our hearts to the point where we won't hear. I really believe that, so.
I understand what you're saying, because this one lady, she would call me all the time and quote scripture to me. So finally she said, well, why don't you come to this Bible study? And I thought, to get her off my back, I'm going to do it. You know what? I never missed
Yeah,
after that.
that's great.
So he's right about the inkling.
Yeah.
It's planting those seeds,
Yeah.
but, that down the road, then you get to the point where you were ready.
Yeah. And the Spirit will urge you forward, if you need to say something, He'll tell you to say it. Don't resist that. Jeff?
Keep hardening our heart, and then once God hardens it, it's not coming back, just like Pharaoh.
Yeah. Yeah. Seek the Lord while he may be found.
Amen.
Any other comments or thoughts or? All right, very good. Let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you so much, Lord, for your word, and Lord, we thank you for your Son and the wisdom, Father, that he gave, Lord, while he was on earth. Lord, I pray, Lord, that you would help us to learn from his words, Lord, and help us to see the world as he sees it, Lord, and as you see it. I pray that you would help us, Lord, to give you all the honor, Lord, and all the glory, Father, and to Lord, not be shy about sharing our salvation, Lord, with others. Father, I pray that you'd not harden our hearts, Lord, in the way of being pharisaical, Lord, and Lord, that we would think that there's some list of little minor things that need to be done in order for someone to be saved. Father, you can save, if you can save a thief on the cross, Lord, with nothing that he could have done, Father. Father, I just pray that you would help us to see, Lord, and help us, Lord, to be your hands and feet. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay. Referring back to Isaiah, it says, 35:5, it says, "Then the eyes of the blind will be opened and the ears of the deaf will be unstopped. The lame will leap like a deer." But it says, it says that, I believe that, oh, and the tongue of the dumb will shout for joy. So, I mean, that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like Jesus is reading through Isaiah and like, you're healing people in order, you know?
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah.